even with sloth and torpor, dullness. You can see dullness before it envelops you, and you can take another path. When mindfulness is very strong and powerful, you can walk through the jungle of the defilements without tripping over or without getting lost. Which is why that the mindfulness, once is established, makes meditation very easy. But as we all know, the trouble is establishing and developing that mindfulness to begin with. And one thing I mentioned last night, I'm going to repeat again, that the cause for the strength of mindfulness is stillness, and its enemy is the lack of sense restraint. So if one indulges in the senses, not just with seeing beautiful sights or hearing beautiful sounds, but indulges even kama vitaka, in fantasizing, in dreaming, in planning, in remembering, you are taking away the energy from your mindfulness. So if you practice indriya samvara, the restraint of the senses, including the restraint of the mental faculty of thinking, you will find that your mindfulness does actually increase, and it becomes powerful enough to be able to see your way through the obstacles of meditation and gain very peaceful and blissful states. So restrain your minds, restrain your senses, talk little, and just no need to go looking around for things. Just keep the mind inside. And then you will find, if you talk little, you restrain the senses, your mindfulness increases, and your meditation gets much easier. Especially for the lay people on this retreat. Talking with each other means that when you close your eyes, you'll be talking to yourself, which is called the wandering mind. If you can maintain the silence outside, so you don't talk to people, you'll find it's much easier to keep silence inside when you start meditating. So when somebody talks to you on this retreat, there's no need to reply. Just take your finger and put it in front of your mouth and go. And if there's any person on this retreat who talks too much, who has a big problem, we usually can go into the town and buy some tape which we can put around their mouth. Just like they do in the movies, so they can't speak at all. Because without that sense restraint and restraint of speech, the mindfulness gets very, very weak. So to be able to get beautiful meditations, it's not just what you do once you sit down on your cushion. It's not just what you do when you start on your walking meditation path. It all begins a long time before, in your sense restraint and also your keeping of your precepts. For once that mindfulness is strong, then you can make use of it in many ways. And the thing I wanted to point out this morning is what I called programming your mindfulness. I use the word programming from modern speech, comparing computers, where you put a program into your computer and then the computer will act accordingly. In very much the same way you can program your mind to avoid potential hindrances. For those of you who still have problem with sloth and torpor, with dullness of the mind, or with wandering, you can try this little technique. This is one of the first examples of what I mean by programming your mindfulness. It's something I call the simile of the snake. This is not the simile of the snake in the famous sutra in the Majjhima Nikaya. This is my own simile. In the early years as a monk in northeast Thailand, we used to be able to wear sandals, but we didn't have any. We were able to use flashlights, but we didn't have any batteries. And we would have our evening meeting and after the meeting was finished, I would have to walk back to my kuti, my hut, maybe 500, 600 meters away, through the jungle path. And there were many snakes in that jungle, and there were many scorpions, centipedes. Actually, the centipedes hurt more than snake bite, and also many biting ants. And I had to walk in the dark through that jungle to avoid those snakes, because I had seen the snakes many, many, many times, and I knew they came out at night. They would be there in the jungle somewhere. I was very wary of those snakes, so I was always on the lookout for them. And even though I was walking either by moonlight or just by starlight, if ever I saw a dark shape across the path, I would see it very quickly, because I was on the lookout for snakes. And I'd either jump over it or go by a different route, which meant, even though I had no sandals or slippers, no flashlight, I never got bitten. And I use that for my meditation as a simile. Each one of you has got some of your favourite hindrances, the hindrances which seem always to stop you progressing on the path of meditation. Whichever is your most common nivarana hindrance, call that your snake. So when you start meditation, it's as if that hindrance is waiting for you somewhere on the path you're about to take. And you warn yourself. Say, for example, it's dullness. Dullness is waiting for me somewhere along the path of meditation. I have to be on the lookout for it. I have to be cautious. So if I see anything which looks like dullness just ahead of me, I will go by another path, or I will take other action to evade it. This is called programming your mindfulness, instructing your mindfulness to be aware, on the lookout for a danger in your meditation. And if you do that at the beginning of your meditation, to tell yourself, I've got dull too many times, it's my biggest obstacle, I'm going to be on the lookout for dullness throughout this whole meditation. Then just like me, walking on the paths, I could see the snakes before they could bite me. You'll be able to see your dullness before it overwhelms you, and you can take a different path. That's one example called programming your mindfulness. If it is restlessness, which comes up, as many people have told me, that when the breath becomes very peaceful, but no piti sukha yet, the breath is very peaceful, so the mindfulness is not that strong to keep up with the subtle object of a subtle breath. Sometimes your mind wanders off. You've seen that many times. It's your snake waiting on the path to bite you. So you tell yourself at the beginning of the meditation, when my breath becomes subtle, I will not start wandering off into thought. You tell yourself that. And you'll find when your breath becomes subtle, that program begins to work. You begin to be on the lookout for that first movement of wandering thought. So you catch it before it takes you too far along the journey of thinking and away from real mindfulness. Mindfulness can be programmed. For those of you who haven't experimented with programming mindfulness yet, a little exercise which will give you a lot of confidence that this programming of mindfulness actually works is a little exercise of telling yourself when you're going to wake up in the morning. I think most of you have got little watches or clocks, have you? Tomorrow morning, I'm not sure what time you want to wake up. Say, no, it is, say 4:30, when somebody rings the bell. Tell yourself when you go to sleep tonight, I will wake up at 4:25. I will wake up at 4:25. I will wake up at 4:25. Repeat it to yourself 3 times, with as much mindfulness as you possibly can generate, so you listen attentively and carefully to those instructions. Then forget about it, let it go, and go to sleep. And you will find you'll wake up in the morning. You'll open your eyes not knowing what time it is, and look at your clock, and it will be 1 or 2 minutes either side of 4:25. The mind or the brain somehow can store this information, and it can know what the time is, even though you're in sleep. And it wakes you up just at the right time. I learned that at my first meditation retreat, which I told you about a couple of days ago when I was a student in Cambridge. I was so surprised how well it worked. So much so that I can use that these days. If I have an appointment, if I have to catch an aircraft, I can tell myself, Ajahn Brahm, you must wake up at 2:30 tomorrow morning. You must wake up at 2:30, you must wake up at 2:30. And I can go to bed, even not setting my alarm, totally confident that around about 2:30 I'll just open my eyes and wake up. The mind works like that. Try it. Do the exercise, and it gives you confidence that it works. And that will also give you confidence you can use the same technique to program your mindfulness to avoid hindrances. Now those are just coarse hindrances. As you go deeper into meditation, the hindrances get more subtle, and their programming of mindfulness is highly effective. In fact, it really is the only tool which can work. For example, if you have a delightful, beautiful breath, and a nimitta starts to come up, and you do the old fault of, should I watch the nimitta, should I watch the breath, what should I do? That disturbs the whole process. At this stage, it is a very subtle mind, and any interference with it will stop it progressing. It's really important to leave things alone the deeper you go into meditation. So the problem comes, well, I always make the same mistake. If I interfere, the meditation falls apart. If I don't interfere, it falls apart. What should I do? And the answer is programming your mindfulness. If that is the problem you have again and again and again at the beginning of your meditation, you tell yourself, when my mind starts to move from the delightful breath onto the nimitta, I won't interfere. I'll let the mind choose whether it wants to see the light or see the breath. When I get to that point, when the delightful breath starts to turn into a nimitta, I won't choose, I will let the mind choose. You repeat these things to yourself 3 times, and then you forget it. You don't keep worrying and obsessing about that instruction, because it's been put into your brain. And once it's inside the mind, it's just waiting for that particular moment, for the instructions to become conscious to you. And this is what happens. You get to that stage where the delightful breath is about to turn into a nimitta. And instead of following your old habit of doubt and confusion of what to do, an idea just appears in your mind. Automatically, just let the mind choose. And because you didn't make that happen, you made it happen maybe half an hour beforehand, it does not disturb the process. It just guides the process into the nimitta and into deeper meditation. Because you don't do anything at that moment, it is done earlier and now it works. It doesn't disturb the mind. And for those of you who want to take this meditation into those jhanas, please practice that programming of mindfulness, because it becomes highly effective just before you enter the jhanas. You have a nimitta, and as said earlier, that nimitta, that light in the mind, has to become powerful, brilliant, and incredibly delightful. And that's such a difficult thing for many meditators to handle unless they have lots and lots and lots of experience. And to help you so you don't waste time on nimitta state, so you can get into those jhanas, please program your mindfulness. If a nimitta comes up, tell yourself, when a nimitta comes up, the observer will be still. The observer will be still. The observer will be still. And that will keep the nimitta stable. As for the delight in the nimitta, you can program your mindfulness to say, if I see a nimitta, I will look for the most beautiful part in that nimitta. If I see a nimitta, my attention will go to the most beautiful part. If I see a nimitta, the attention will go to the most beautiful part. And that is a very effective way of getting more brilliance quicker. And nimitta, all nimittas, they are not evenly bright. There are some parts brighter and more delightful than others. And you just program your mindfulness like that, and automatically the mind will go to the delightful, the sweet point of that nimitta. And by doing that, the nimitta gets brighter and brighter and brighter. Stabilizing and brightening the nimitta, they almost go together, because the more stable your nimitta is, the brighter it grows. The brighter it is, the easier it is to keep stable, simply because it's so gorgeous that you don't want to move. It is the delight which sticks the mindfulness onto the object. No longer effort, but delight draws the mind in. By giving those instructions, it means that when nimitta does happen, you don't have to decide what to do. You don't give yourself any instructions, because making decisions, giving instructions at that time will disturb the whole process. For those of you who haven't heard Ajahn Chah's great simile of the still forest pool, I'll repeat it here. It shows what happens and what you should not do when things like nimitta appear. This was a story of the days when monks in Thailand would go charika, wandering from place to place, as monks do these days here in Sri Lanka. Unfortunately, that Thailand has got so well developed, there are very few forests. And wherever there was a beautiful forest, entrepreneurs have built big 5-star resorts where tourists from the West go. So there's no place left for the monks, except maybe on the border areas. Elsewhere is developed. So there's not much point for monks going wandering in Thailand these days. There is no solitude or peace to be found except in very rare pockets of jungle. But in those days, having walked through the forests all day, you can imagine that you are tired and dirty, and the first thing you would look for is a lake or a river in which to wash, and to fill up your water bottle through a strainer. And after washing, filling up your water bottle, you would set up these mosquito net tents the monks in Thailand used to carry around with them. And you'd sit meditation, or sometimes, as Ajahn Chah would do, he'd just watch in the evening as the animals came out to play by the forest pool. But he would notice that the animals would not come out if he was not still. Because animals in the jungle would be afraid of human beings. Because most human beings they would meet were hunters. And seeing a human being in the jungle meant they were likely to be killed. It was like a human being seeing a tiger. You'd be afraid. Animals seeing a human would similarly be terrified. So the animals would come out from the jungle, also to drink and to wash in the forest pool. They would look around and sniff. And if they could sense there was a human being there, even though they were thirsty, they would not risk it. They would go back into the forest. But if he sat perfectly still, the wild animals would not know that somebody was watching. And then they'd come out to drink, to wash and to play, not realizing somebody was watching. In the same way, Ajahn Chah would say, nimittas come out to play, but if they think that someone's watching, they will disappear straight away, because they're very shy. You have to be able to be that still, just like an Ajahn Chah, that the animals don't realize that someone is there watching. To be able to observe without interfering. This is like I said on the first night, you have to train like a burglar. Now you have to train like CIA. To be able to watch without being seen. So, after a while you can do that. You can just sit there. And nimitta comes out and you're not interfering at all. Because you know how to be still. And Ajahn Chah would continue. He said the ordinary animals would come out to play. And it was delightful to watch them. For those of you who do live in the forest, sometimes you see the animals playing. And it's delightful. I remember a time in the jungles in north of Thailand. My hut, made of wood, had a small hole in it where the knot of wood had fallen out. And I would put a bowl of water out for the birds to drink in the evening. And even though this was wild jungle, after a short while the birds knew there was water by my hut to drink and to wash. But what really surprised me, after a couple of days, these wild birds of many species organized themselves, and in the evening they would stand in line. The one in front would drink and wash first, while the second in line would wait. Once the first had finished, then the second would wait. I'd never seen birds line up like that before. Even in Sri Lanka, it's very hard to see people line up at a bus stop these days. But there the birds were, lining up. But just like human beings, there would always be one bird who couldn't wait, who tried to jump the queue. When that bird tried to push himself or herself in and get to the water first, all the other birds would jump on it, peck it, beat it up, and let it fly away. There was an order there, and that order was enforced. And I delighted in seeing that. That was strange, and I'd never seen that before. And so, like watching wild animals is full of joy and full of fun. So that's what Ajahn Chah would do. But of course he had to be quiet, otherwise they would not play. They would be afraid and run away. But he would say that after the ordinary animals would come out and play, and sometimes, if he was very, very still, these amazing animals would come out from the jungle. Animals whose names he did not know. Animals which had never been described to him before by his parents or teachers. Incredibly beautiful, strange animals which were so rare. He meant the jhanas. But they would only come out when it was absolutely still. If he moved a tiny bit, they would know, and they would run away again. He said you had to be perfectly still for those animals to come out. But when they did come out, They'll give you so much joy and happiness, because they're the most amazing animals in the whole jungle, the jhanas. Now when I heard that story, not only did I realize that Ajahn Chah knew what he was talking about, because he could put it in a description from his daily life, which was much more than you see in the suttas. It meant he could understand what these jhanas were. But it was also invaluable advice of what to do at that stage of meditation, which was be still. In other words, don't do anything. Be motionless. Let go of your will, which always makes the mind move. Be still. Disappear. So the animals can't see you. You're getting closer to anatta when you're still and nothing moves. Trouble was, when I knew what to do, when the nimittas were very strong, you're about to go into jhana, I knew I was supposed to be still. But I moved. I got excited. For me, it was excitement, was my big hindrance at that stage. For many others of you, the hindrance will be fear. Those are the two big obstacles which stop you getting into the jhanas. Excitement and fear. They're in the Upakilesa Sutta, with many other Upakilesas, these fine defilements, which are the last barrier to freedom of the mind, the vimokas, to jhanas. Fear and excitement. They are mentioned there, in the Upakilesa Sutta, with many other Upakilesas, but those are the two big ones. And those are the ones which I'm going to point out to you now. Trouble is, when fear comes up, you can't say, I won't be afraid. If you do, the animals know you're there and will run away. You can't say, don't be excited, don't be excited. The animal will feel that and will run away. At that stage, if excitement comes, it's come, you've lost it. You have to start again. If fear comes, you've lost it again. And that's so frustrating. You get so close to these jhanas, and just the last step, you fail. And the way to overcome fear and excitement, the only way which I have seen works, is by programming your mindfulness. If you've had excitement a couple of times, wow, this is immense, this is amazing, I'm actually getting somewhere, this is Uttari Manusa Dhamma, this is big stuff in the path of meditation. If that starts to happen, and you realize that this is happening many times, and you're likely to have that experience in this meditation coming, you just program your mindfulness. You've sat down, you've got your body comfortable, a bit of present moment awareness and silence before you even let the breath happen. You tell yourself, when a nimitta comes and gets very bright and I'm about to enter jhanas, I will not be excited. I will not be excited. I will not be excited. Repeat the words in your own language, in your own way, 3 times. Make the instructions very clear. One of the problems when people give instructions is it's unclear, so the person you're telling what to do doesn't really know what they're supposed to do. Keep it simple, keep it clear, so the message cannot be mistaken. Say it 3 times, forget it. And you'll find it's an amazing experience. You get to the stage, the last stage before you enter jhana, and you fail so many times through excitement. And excitement is about to appear. And the mind says, I will not be excited. And you realize where that came from. You put that instruction in half an hour and a half before. And now it works. And because you're not doing it, it doesn't disturb the process. As it were, the animals don't realize something's been done because you haven't said it. you have a mood. I would not be excited. And that's enough to suppress that excitement. You remain still and you enter the jhanas, easily, delightfully, at last. The same thing happens with fear. The reason why it is fearful is because whenever you have a sense of self, an atta, you will always want to keep control of things, control of your meditation. And at the doorway into jhanas you have to let go of control. You've let go so much already, but control is one of the biggest things you have to let go of to enter those jhanas. And that's scary. Number two, these are immense experiences. Just in the amount of bliss which we're about to experience, that's scary because it's huge and you don't know whether you can handle it. It's like if any of you have ever seen a tiger in the jungle or a big elephant. Just their power and strength can scare you. Now the jhanas are far, far more powerful than that. Their sheer immensity can be terrifying. You know that. You feel that. And so it's very easy to be afraid. One of the reasons I've been teaching jhanas for many years now is actually for me to program your mindfulness, which I've been doing for the last 2 or 3 days. In the West we call this brainwashing. And I make no secret of the fact I've been brainwashing you. Just the same way that my teacher brainwashed me in a very beautiful way, just like the Buddha started brainwashing, conditioning you, teaching you the Dhamma. And it's a weird thing, that all these things which I'm teaching you, you may reject, that makes no sense. You may disagree with, like that's hopeless. But it's already got into your minds. And you'll be meditating, maybe on this retreat, or a year or 2 or 3 years at time, and you're about to enter jhana. And something tells you, I will not be afraid. And you trace that back, where that came from. And you know where it came from. It came from right now. This is actually how your mind works. The more profound and deep the meditation, the more effective is this conditioning. Because at this stage your mind is so subtle, it's easy to condition. As long as that conditioning is done beforehand, not at the time. Then you're gone into the jhanas, away having a wonderful time. And of course, that is what I wish for every one of you. That is why I've come here. Not to teach you the Dhamma, you'll find that for yourself. To teach the way into jhanas, so you can experience Samma Samadhi. Once you've experienced that Samma Samadhi, you've experienced those jhanas, then you have, each one of you have more than enough understanding of Buddha Vacana, the teachings of the Buddha, to understand what needs to be done next. Comparing your experience with what the Buddha said. And at last, now I know what he meant. Beforehand, you simply have not got enough information. Your experience of the world is too limited. You can't understand totally what the Buddha said. So, my whole point of being here is to try and get you into one of those jhanas, just for the first time. Sneak in, even if you're not deserving of it. Sneak in and have a peek and look what it's like. And that will show you what meditation is really all about. All those hindrances, by programming your mindfulness, they can be overcome. Some of the more subtle hindrances which you may have, doubt about your own abilities. Already somebody asked, if my sila is not perfect, am I able to get into the jhanas? Many years ago, there was an Australian nun who spent the was in my monastery in Perth. During the was, her meditation was going very well, And she got into the nimitta stage of meditation. Very strong, beautiful, powerful nimittas. It does seem, from my experience of teaching, that the female has an easier time getting into jhanas than the male. This is a generalization, but this is based on my experiences of teaching. The reason is because when you get to nimitta, you have to let go of your intellectual faculties and be more emotional, to feel your way in, rather than think your way in. The males are great thinkers, thinkers, that's what we've been trained. Women are feelers, feelers, feelers. This is a generalization, and there are many exceptions to the rule, but that is my experience, that the female meditator has an easier time getting into nimittas and jhanas. They're not so afraid of the powerful emotion of piti sukha which comes at that time. They don't try and control it, as men do. But don't worry, guys. Once you do get the jhanas, you get insights much more quickly than the females. You catch up with them. But it was an interesting sort of almost experience of teaching. Why is that? Because you do have to, guys, you have to suspend all of your intellectual judging, naming, thinking, what is this, what am I supposed to do next? All that stuff which is very male mind. Please let that go, especially the deeper stages. You have to totally surrender, let go. And don't be, what is the word for husband in Sinhala? Sami, what does that mean? Lord, controller, boss? Swami, yes. You have to let that go. You're not the controller anymore. You're not the boss. You're just not anything. You disappear. And then you'll find it's easier to get into those jhanas. So if you are a person like this female who had a wonderful time getting into the nimittas, but she could go no further. And when I gave her an interview, I asked her, what's going on? Everything is going perfectly well. You've got right to the threshold of jhanas. What is stopping you? And what she said next was very typical of a Westerner and may also be part of the Sri Lankan mind as well. She said, I couldn't go further because I thought I didn't deserve it. I did not deserve to be enlightened. I didn't deserve jhanas. When I heard that, I felt so sad. It's just, why? You do deserve jhanas. You can get those jhanas. This is the Buddha's gift to you. Please, have a jhana. And said, no, I don't deserve it. So that is one of the hindrances of guilt, lack of self-esteem. You think that you're not pure enough to get a jhana. You're lay people. We can't get jhanas. Maybe the holy monks or the holy bhikkhunis and Dasasila Matas, but not me. I'm a lay person. Yes, you can. Lay people have. Western lay people, if they can. You're Buddhist. You're born in a Buddhist country. You've got much more parameters than the Westerners. We had to struggle to get to a nice Buddhist country like Sri Lanka or Thailand. You were born here. You've got Buddhism handed to you on a plate. I had to search for it. So you have got much greater good karma in the past than I had. Sometimes I look at my life. What stupid thing did I do in my past life to be born in England? It must have been something very bad. Or Austria or Germany or Poland, wherever you come from, America. Don't do that next time. But sometimes we think we don't deserve it. Or I'm a woman. You know what it's like in Sri Lanka? Sometimes you think that you're second class. I'm a woman, I can't get enlightened. Please look at the Therigatha, the poems of the enlightened sisters in the time of the Buddha. It's great women. They could do it. So can you. Now that is a hindrance. It's not a hindrance which is mentioned in the text, but a hindrance which actually comes up. So if that is a hindrance for you, and you notice that that's one of the reasons why you can't get deep, because you think you don't deserve it, program your mindfulness. Begin the meditation. I deserve jhana. I deserve jhana. I deserve jhana. And you'll be surprised how powerful that is to encourage you to go all the way into this jhanas. You know why we have that problem? It's the way that we are brought up, especially our education system, which always tells us where we make mistakes. Unless you come top of the class, unless you get to a good, great school and get the prizes, unless you go to university and get firsts, you're always told by your parents, you're not good enough. You're always told by your teachers, not good enough. You imagine a child growing up like that, hearing that all their life. They believe they aren't good enough. And when they try and meditate, it's ingrained, conditioned in them, they're not good enough. So they think, no way can I get jhanas. But of course, you have to break that conditioning. I am good enough. I'm a human being. Enough good karma to be born as a human being in a time when the Buddha's teaching is still alive, powerful, and present for you, where you can hear the greatest of teachings. You can get the whole Tipitaka just on these little memory sticks or iPods these days. And I've seen these iPods in Singapore, they're just so tiny and they've got the whole Pitaka on them. In the time of the Buddha, you had to travel miles and miles and miles just to listen to one sermon. And now you've got every teaching of the Buddha there for you. You don't have to travel anywhere. All the great teachings are just there for you. You're living in a fortunate time where teachings are so easily accessible. So why not? Why can't I achieve those great states of meditation? I can. I will. And by programming your mindfulness that way, it's amazing just how much success people have. In the West, we know this as sports psychology. Imagine that the coach of the Sri Lankan cricket team went and told all those players, you've got no hope of winning the World Cup this year. India is a far stronger team. And South Africa are coming up as well. They might even beat you. But you, no chance you have of winning the World Cup. Now, would a coach like that be a good coach? If you say you're going to lose, you're going to lose, of course you do lose. So a good coach, say the coach of the Australian cricket team, has to be a good liar. He has to break his precepts and say, you can win. Yes, you're as good as anybody else. And then actually, maybe they can win. It's not really lying. It's just knowing the possibilities. The board is round. It can go both ways. Who knows who's going to win? So because of that, you have to give yourself that encouragement. Not I can't, just I haven't yet. That's why in meditation, as a Buddhist monk, as a Buddhist nun, as a layperson, it's not I can't meditate, it's not I can't get nimitta, it's not I can't get jhana, it's not I can't get enlightened, it's just I haven't yet. There's no such thing as can't, haven't yet. And to encourage you with all these other great beings in the time of the Buddha who became enlightened, prostitutes, street sweepers, dwarfs like Hagalle, those with physical disabilities, crazy ladies like Patachara. These weren't superstars. These were ordinary people who, because they understood the path, got jhanas and became fully enlightened. If they can, you can. Why not? So giving yourself that encouraging, programming your mindfulness. That's one of my jobs, is to be your coach. So yes, you can, to enhance your skills, to inspire you that yes, it can be done. And it's amazing just how much that works. Improves your meditation, no end. So mindfulness is not just being aware. It's making use of this mindfulness, training it. Because mindfulness also remembers instructions. It knows what to do. It is like the driver of a vehicle. He doesn't just know where he is in the journey he is undertaking. He also understands which way to go, whether to accelerate, whether to slow down. It knows the path and remembers the instructions. And I've given you many instructions on this retreat, and there's more to come. You give yourself those instructions as well. What is your problem? Why is it you can't get deeper than you have already got so far? What is the barrier? Don't use willpower. Don't say, I've got to try harder, I've got to sit longer, I've got to force myself. That does not work. Use wisdom power. Be smart, not strong. Smart meditating, not forceful meditating. And if you're smart, there's no obstacle that you can't overcome. You get into deep meditation and have a wonderful time. And you make me happy, let alone yourself. So that's the talk this morning on programming mindfulness. Very good.